Now, let me share with you the IC legislation timeline. IC stands for internal controls. Now, this is more of for appreciation, okay? Because these are US enacted laws. So, mga batas ito sa US, sa Amerika. Alam naman ninyo that the Philippines is a developing country. So, although meron tayong mga regulations sa ngayon, they are very limited. And because sa mga first world country kagaya ni US na kung saan yung paggamit ng computers ay hindi na bago at it has been on for a number of decades na. So marami na rin silang naipatupad na batas because marami na rin nangyari sa kanila. So dito makikita ninyo ang ilan sa mga batas na naipatupad na may kinalaman sa computers. Okay? Sa paggamit ng computers in the financial processing, mga transactions that affects the financial statements, okay, or that affects the financials of the company. So the first legislation, the first law that I want to share with you is this one that happened in 1933, yung Securities Act of 1933. Actually, this is a response, including this Securities Exchange Act of 1934. This is a response because of the stock market crash and worldwide financial frauds that happened in the past years. Okay, so nagkaroon ng Securities Act of 1933 and the Securities Exchange Act of 1934. Ang recorded commercial use of computers happened in 1952, and nagkaroon ng mga computer-related crimes noong 1966. Now, meron tayong tinatawag or sa US na tinatawag na EFCA scandal or yung Equity Funding Corporation of America scandal na nangyari noong 1973. Okay? Then later on, the following year, ay ipinatupad itong Privacy Act of 1974. In 1976, nagkaroon naman ng copyright law. And in 1977, nagkaroon ng Foreign Corrupt Practice Act or yung FCPA Act of 1977. Now, noong 1986, okay, naipatupad naman yung Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. The same year, nagkaroon ng Electronic Communications Privacy Act. Okay, and then the following year, noong 1987, meron Computer Security Act. Okay, then 5 years after, dito na pumasok yung COSO. The Committee of Sponsoring Organization of the Tradeway Commission or simply yung COSO ay in-establish nila yung COSO framework na naging daan naman for the adoption by the AICPA of the COSO model with the development of SAS 78 or the Statements of Auditing Standard 78, the consideration of internal control in a financial statement audit. Then 4 years after, okay, we have the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996 na may kinalaman naman sa mga insurance nasa medical profession. In 1996 also, nagkaroon ng Communications Decency Act, okay? And in 1999, meron tayo ng Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act of 1999. And then, 3 years after, ito yung pinakasikat, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002. And on the same year, meron din ng Homeland Security Act of 2002. Now, para naman magkaroon kayo ng idea kung ano ito, may mga nilagay ako ng mga konting items para maintindihan ninyo. Let's say, for the Securities Act of 1933, ang dalawang objective kaya ito ipinatupad is for the first one, para yung mga investors ay makatanggap ng mga financial and other significant information concerning securities na ino-offer for public sale. So doon sa mga public companies na nag-aalok ng mga securities. And when I am talking of securities, hindi lang ito mga stocks So meron kasi tayong mga equity securities, mga debt securities. Okay? So stocks, bonds, options, warrants at iba pa. Okay? And also the objective of this Securities Act is also to prohibit deceit, misrepresentation and other fraud in the sale of securities. And because of the stock market crash that happened years ago. Okay? Now, ang sumunod ay etong Securities Exchange Act of 1934. Ito yung law, ito yung legislation, ito yung enactment na nag-create ng Securities and Exchange Commission sa US. At kung nagtataka kayo, di ba sir, meron din naman tayo ng Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, sa Philippines. Oh yes, because normally we are adopting the laws, okay, or we are simply following or adopting, implementing, promulgating laws that are applied sa ibang bansa. At kung ito naman ay applicable sa ating setting, edi fina-follow natin ito. Some of the keynotes in the creation of the SEC is that the SEC is empowered with broad authority. So malawak na kapangyarihan over all aspects of the securities industry. They are also, or the SEC is also empowered with authority over auditing standards. Okay, so meron ding kapangyarihan sila sa auditing standards. And yung mga public companies na required to be audited, yung mga public companies, they are required to be audited by an independent auditor. And etong mga SEC reporting companies or mga companies na sumusunod or nagre-report sa SEC, kinakailangan nila na mag-maintain ng systems of internal controls. Na later on, ito ay magiging affected, okay, by the Sarbanes-Oxley Act or the SOX. Because although as early as 1934, may mga internal controls na mga batas na, pero hindi ganoon napaka-lenient ng application, ng implementation. Okay? Until nagkaroon talaga ng mga problema, saka naging mahigpit na sa pagpapatupad ng mga internal controls. Now, doon sa Privacy Act of 1974 naman, ang purpose nito is to provide a code of fair information practices that govern the collection, okay, pangongolekta, pagme-maintain, paggamit, pagdidistribute ng mga information patungkol sa isang individual. Okay, that is maintained in systems of records by federal agencies. And when we are talking of federal dito, we are talking of government. Okay, because the US is a federal country. Yung kanilang government is a federal government. Privacy Act. So maisip ninyo, similar yata ito sa Data Privacy Act natin dito sa Pilipinas na naisabatas recent years ago. Okay. Now, ano naman ang sumunod? Etong copyright law naman, may kinalaman ito sa copyright. Okay? At dito, may mga existing laws naman na kasi before. Pero etong copyright law, they added software and other intellectual properties into existing copyright protection laws. Okay, so dinagdag. Okay, syempre, as time changes, may mga pumapasok na mga bagong technology at normally, napagluluma na yung mga batas before, so kailangang i-update, i-amend. So, etong Copyright Law of 1976 added this software and other intellectual properties sa mga existing na copyright laws. At dito, kailangan tandaan na yung management ay personally liable for violations. Let's say, for example, mga software piracy. Kung sakali na may sapat na ebidensya na nakuha, So, tawag nito, yari ang management. So, meron silang liability doon. Now, dito naman sa Foreign Corrupt Practices Act of 1977, ang mga companies na registered kay SEC ay kinakailangan na mag-keep ng record that fairly and reasonably reflect the transactions of the firm and its financial position. And maintain a system of internal control. Ayan na naman, internal controls that provides reasonable assurance that the organization's objectives are met. So basically, ang mga batas kasi na ito ay response, in response sa mga nangyayari. So, nagkakaroon minsan ng pressure, okay, from those affected, para sa katuparan, maisabatas itong mga enactments na ito, itong mga laws na ito. So, kaya siya, foreign corrupt practices. So, as a result of mga corrupt practices, that happened, that is, na naging aware sila. Now, ito namang Computer Fraud and Abuse Act of 1986, pinagbabawal din dito, so ang pinaka-objective nito is pinagbabawal, yung pag-access ng computer kung hindi ka authorized or pag-access ng computer na exceeding your authorization. So normally sa mga organizations, sa mga companies, may mga ano yan restricted access, may mga limited access. Depende sa position mo, depende sa trabaho mo. So, kung ano lang yung access mo, hanggang doon ka lang. So, pag lumagpas ka doon, nag-access ka ng ibang mga systems, ibang mga software na wala ka namang dapat access doon. So, yari ka because of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act of 1986. So, bawal po. Or sumobra ka doon sa authorization na meron ka. Now, also in that same year, yung Electronic Communications Privacy Act. Okay? Dito naman, pinoprotektahan yung mga wire, oral, and electronic communications. O bakit wire? Kasi di ba yung mga linya ng telepono, mga wires ito, no? Mga cables, mga kable. Oral and electronic communication. Okay? While those communications are being made, okay, habang nangyayari ito, while in transit, and when they are stored on computers. So siguro sa atin, sa Philippine setting, narinig na ninyo, hindi ko lang alam kung aware kayo sa mga balita before, let's say yung wiretapping sa panahon ni President Arroyo, So yung wiretap ni Gloria. Ayan, so etong Electronic Communications Privacy Act of 1986 sa US, it protects yung security ng mga wire, oral, and electronic communications habang nangyayari yun, habang in transit at habang naka-store sila sa computers. Okay. Now, yung Computer Security Act of 1987, this was enacted naman para ma-improve yung security and privacy of sensitive information. Ito ay sa mga federal computer systems. So sa government naman ito. Now, sa 1992, sikat ito because we are talking of the COSO here. Ang Committee of Sponsoring Organization, yung COSO, they established the COSO framework, which is an adoption of a control model from the management perspective. Okay, so this is a response of mga scandals na nangyayari sa mga previous years, sa mga nagdaang taon. Kaya they have to create this one. Now, these are sponsored by various parties, various institutions. We have the Financial Executives International, FEI. I'm not sure kung ang equivalent nito sa atin sa Philippine setting is yung FINEX, Financial Executives. Okay? Pero possible, we also have the Institute of Management Accountants or yung IMA. Yung American Accounting Association, AAA. Or maybe familiar kayo dito because of one of the definitions of accounting galing sa kanila. AICPA, okay? American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. Ano yung local counterpart nito sa atin? This is the PICPA, Philippine. Palitan mo lang itong letter A dito. And then we also have the Institute of Internal Auditors or the IIA. So sila yung mga nag-sponsor nito, at para magawa itong COSO model, which is a very good model, a very good framework for internal controls or in the establishment of internal controls. Okay? Next, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. Ito naman was created for the protection of sensitive patients' health information from being disclosed without consent or knowledge. Kasi halimbawa, sabihin na natin na pasyente ka. Okay? So may mga personal information na makukuha galing sa'yo kasi na-admit ka, nagkasakit ka. So may mga personal information that has to be filled up. So papaano natin masisigurado na protected yung sensitive information na yon? In the US, ipinatupad itong Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. So bawal kinakailangan pangalagaan ang mga information, bawal itong i-divulge sa iba unless mayroong consent, So it cannot be disclosed without the consent of the patient. Okay? So next tayo. Etong Communications Decency Act naman, this is the law that protects mga indecent acts. Okay? Or in short, in simple terms, this was enacted to regulate yung mga porno materials, mga pornographic materials on the internet, lalong-lalo na sa mga minors o yung mga under 18 years of age. Okay? Ito, yung Gramm-Leach and Bliley Act of 1999. Ito naman ay nagre-require sa mga financial institutions. So, mga bangko, okay? mga financial companies, okay, to explain their information sharing practices to their customers and to safeguard sensitive data. Kung nag-apply ka ng credit card, kunwari, di ba? So may mga personal information yan. Or simply you want to open a bank account. So may mga information na makukuha din sa'yo. So etong law na ito sa US ay ipinatupad para itong mga financial institution ay i-require, okay, sila na ipaalam doon sa mga customers nila papaano ang magiging information sharing. Kasi normally may mga sharing of information yan between banks or between other parties So papaano ba ang patakaran nila about dyan? So kailangang i-explain ito ng mabuti doon sa mga customers nila. Ayan po, So that is the Gramm-Leach and Bliley Act of 1999. Now, pagdating sa SOX, okay, itong Sarbanes-Oxley Act, ito pinaka mahalaga sa mga batas na kailangan ninyong tandaan, Because this one, itong SOX na ito, supports efforts to increase public confidence in capital markets, by seeking to improve yung corporate governance, internal controls, audit quality. Okay? At dito kasi ay nire-require yung management ng mga public companies na magkaroon, mag-implement ng sapat na internal control or system of internal control over financial reporting because this will affect the financial statements. Yung mga output, yung mga reports na i-generate, lalong-lalo na pag computerized accounting ito, di ba? So, malaki dapat yung reliance natin. Paano natin masisecure na yung mga pinoprovide sa atin ng computers ay tama. And sa pagpaprocess kasi nitong mga records na ito, dumadaan ito sa iba't ibang mga systems. Okay? Iba't ibang um, departments, maaring iba't iba yung mga sources nito. So how do we secure that information para tama, yung kalalabasan, reliable ito. Okay? Now, etong management, etong SOX na ito, ang pertinent sections ay na related sa atin ay yung Section 302 and Section 404. Sa 302, tinag ko ito as certification, samantalang sa 404, yung assessment. Ang ibig sabihin kasi nito, itong dalawa, this codifies the management responsibilities for internal control. So for Section 302, ang sinasabi nito that the corporate management o yung management ay required sila na i-certify, okay, na meron silang organization's internal control. At they have to certify it on a quarterly and annual basis. Samantalang itong Section 404, dito naman ang mandate nito is assess ninyo. You certify na meron kayong internal controls. Pero you have to assess the effectiveness of the controls, sa pamamagitan ng pag-provide ng annual reports. Okay, so dito naka-codify yung may kinalaman sa internal controls and the responsibility of the management. Okay? And then last, yung Homeland Security Act. Ito naman ay as a response doon sa naging terrorist attack sa September 11, yung World Trade Center. Okay, noong 2002, 9/11. I remember second year high school ito nung nangyari ito, At hindi lang po ito yung terrorist attack na doon sa World Trade Center ay binangga yung dalawang hinijack na eroplano, commercial airplanes. Kung hindi, yung mga mailing din ng mga anthrax. So, bio warfare. Now, this incorporates the Cybersecurity Enhancement Act, okay, which allows the yung security personnel, okay, the federal government, to gather telephone numbers, IP addresses, URL. URL stands for Universal Resource Locators, email addresses when there is an immediate threat to national security. Okay? So, normally, bawal ito, kasi personal, private information ito. Pero when there is an immediate threat to national security, okay, so pwede nila itong ma-access para makita, kung may kinalaman ka, especially for terrorist attacks. Okay, for terrorism in general. So yun po, So I hope nakatulong itong ating IC legislation timeline para magkaroon kayo ng idea, especially in the extent of these laws in the US setting. Okay, para naman for appreciation on our local setup. So hanggang dito muna tayo. Maraming salamat. So if you have any questions, again, please let me know. You may comment down below. Bye-bye.